Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD, Get You Done Venture Studios, premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also AI, one of the first generative AI companies I co-founded with Dr. David Yang in 2016. We believe at GSD that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. So with that, I'd like to have my incredible guest, Ben York, who's the CEO of Genetica, and we're going to talk a little bit about his journey, including Colby College. How you doing here, Ben?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So can you tell me a little bit about your journey from economics and venture capital
Yeah,
to
yeah,
founding and leading Genetica?
yeah. It was not a straight line, but I suppose like all entrepreneurial journeys, that's the case, right? Initially went into banking and thought that that's what I was going to do for the rest of my career. Pretty quickly realized I really got bit by the startup bug and wanted to get into tech, get into venture. Didn't really know how to do that, and honestly just moved out to San Francisco and tried to figure it out. Got a job at a startup like most do, and get some operating experience under my belt before networking my way into the VC space. And initially with an investor network and venture fund, leading deal flow and due diligence there, kind of cut my teeth, learning the ropes, then moved over to a family office and accelerator program, which is what led me to Genetica. Connected with my co-founder there, and the rest is history.
Which family office were you with?
It's a small group. The firm is called Ramp Rate, so it's run like an accelerator program, early stage ventures, helping out with biz dev, business plans, intros to investors, all that kind of stuff, and then investing out of the individual's portfolio as well. So I led all of the alternative health portfolio within that accelerator program, and then oversaw his full portfolio as well, which was a good experience. It was really fun to be able to look across asset classes and be able to take in, the full market dynamics as opposed to just what I was doing at, Citigroup early on or just in the startup ecosystem. It was nice to have that kind of blend across asset classes.
Yeah, we know a little bit about that. We're a family office too, mine.
Yeah.
Actually, we are a scaler. So that's how we started into this thing 44 years ago, by the way. A
Yeah.
long time ago. I've been doing this a long time. Although the stem cells do work. So Brian Jones is
Yeah.
right. I've had 100 million stem cells put in my body. It does change
That's
things, that's
awesome.
for sure. What's inspired you to start Genetica, specifically targeting AI solutions for retail and hospitality in regulated markets?
Yeah, the concept really came from my co-founder. So he owned and operated a chain of retail locations in the Midwest, and with an entrepreneurial background and a tech background, he realized it was still too difficult to make data-driven decisions in a retail environment. How do you pull together the disparate systems? What is a point of sale saying? What is a loyalty management saying? How do you pull all of that information together and make a uniform decision, have one place to look at to understand what's going on across the business and across locations too. And when he first pitched me on the concept, I immediately understood the vision and the thesis. I actually took it to the family office, but it was too early at the time. And in hindsight, I'm thankful for that, because that actually allowed me to come on as an advisor, build a working relationship with my co-founder, and then join him full time when the time was right. So that was really the thesis behind it, and it's still true today. I mean, when we started that, AI was still. I mean, we were saying earlier in 2016, AI was in its infancy. I mean, even a couple of years ago, it was relatively in its infancy compared to where we are today. And so we were in the lab for a few years, building, putting pieces together, and it's really cool to see kind of the being able to use the latest and greatest tools in the ecosystem to really accelerate that development has been pretty outstanding.
I started in AI 29 years ago, so expert
Yeah.
systems. And, I'm a clinical psychologist too. So when I started, I remember in graduate school, and I got on the mainframe computer and I said, when does the capacity of this equal the capacity of the human brain? I remember directly the day I did it, because I was going to go from graduate school to go to medical school. And that was the day I decided I wasn't going to do it. That was so fascinated with technology that I started going forward. This infobesity problem that you're talking about, I've been writing about that since 2015. And that challenge that we have, I mean, think about it, Ben. You have about 300,000 items in your personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You, Ben, have more information in your personal cloud than the entire web. The problem is Ben's world is following the same trajectory of the World Wide Web. By that, I mean doubling every year. In 5 years with the Internet of Things, you're going to have 10 million items. Here's the thing. Now, get this. You're a smart guy. You went to Kobe, been a venture capitalist. But how many times in the last 3 weeks somebody said, "Hey, Ben, I sent you a message. Did you get it? Where'd you send it?" I
Yeah,
sent it to your
exactly.
email. Which one? Your corporate, your Gmail, your Slack, your WhatsApp. Now you're using WhatsApp as a filtering tool, or Telegram, because you just
Yeah.
can't find it. This challenge we have is crippling us. And in fact, nobody's going down through and addressing the core problem, which is the infobesity. Now, on your side, you've got about 300,000 items, but so look at the US, right? Look at the world. We got 176 zettabytes of data on the planet. If you took DVDs or CDs and stacked them one on top of another, today would be 128 times between Earth and the moon, growing at 70% per year. This is the problem we have. So having these super powered tools, I own an R&D lab. So when I'm talking about this, I've been working on multi-agent large language models for about 3 years, right? So people didn't even know what it was when I got started. They didn't realize about ChatGPT. I wrote one of the first articles. They came out in December. I wrote an article in February, right? And I was diving in. I was way before that, because this is the future. Whoever has this has a superpower. So I love what you're doing. When you look at, you mentioned the challenges of theft and anomalies in restaurants. It's a huge problem, right? Can you walk me through how Genetica specifically detects these issues?
Yeah, I think there's one example I like to draw on from one of our early clients in the retail side, not on the restaurant side. And what we were able to detect is that for every single shift that one of the employees had, there was a discrepancy between the inventory and the cash drawer. And so we noticed that kind of anomaly that, whether it was, just like a couple bucks or even more than that, we noticed that discrepancy between the inventory and the cash drawer and notified our client, and they looked at the tapes, and lo and behold, in the next shift the guy did the same thing again. And so that's kind of like one of the examples of the way we detect patterns in each of the employees' behaviors, each of the customer transactions through the point of sale, and create those alerts to notify the retailers just what's going on, and how to intervene in those anomalies. On the restaurant side, though, it can be everything from like discount rate. Maybe there was a high discount rate on a check, or frequency of discount rates, or something along those lines, that just like something that's not a normal pattern that needs to be looked into further. We go the next step and actually recommend a recommendation on what they should be doing with that information. But the first step is to just alert those patterns within the data, understand what's going on, and notify the client of the discrepancy there.
No, that sounds great. So you look at what makes your approach to identifying these anomalies superior to traditional methods like manual audits or simple BI dashboards.
Well, I think there's two things to highlight there. One is that I think people are just bored of, not maybe not bored, but there are too many of those BI dashboards, right? They're all, pretty much showing the same things, but they're not showing you what to do with that information. And that was echoed on a call I had earlier today with a large investor. They echoed that sentiment as just it's not enough to just show the information. You have to understand what to do with that information as well. And that's really the core, the crux of the issue is like, um, it's really not enough anymore with AI to just show the patterns. You really have to understand what's the why behind what's going on, and that helps to identify like what should the next steps actually be. And we help them take those actions as well through our agents. But that's kind of the first step there.
Now, how do you go from Waterville, Maine to San Francisco, California?
Well, so I made a stop in Chicago on the way, for a few years, and I'm glad I spent the time there. I love that town, but it was not the right fit. I came to San Francisco on a vacation, and as soon as I stepped outside of the Uber, I was like, took a look around and I was like, I I think I like this place a lot, and had an awesome time, and biking over the bridge. I mean, the
Oh, that's
bridge.
so much fun. I like
Yeah,
actually, you know what I like to do? I like to take my bike on the ferry over to Tiburon
yeah,
and
yeah,
ride around over in Tiburon. It's really fun there. And I like taking my bike and going up across the bridge. It's really, as long as it's not too windy. I got to tell you,
exactly.
sometimes it gets insanely windy up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Well, and so back when I was in banking too, I kind of had the realization it wasn't just the location that made the switch. It was like, okay, I see what's going on in the tech space. I want to apply my financial background and my investment background to this category, but I didn't really know much about venture. I was just out of college, and again thought that the banking was going to be my career for good. And so, networked as much as I could across the country. But until you step foot in the city, it's kind of hard to make those connections and network in the same way. And I mean, it was within a week of setting foot in San Francisco that I landed at a startup, and the continue to network from there.
So how do you take, you're the second person. I had somebody from India that was, close to Olympic level in terms of squash. But how do you go down through and use the team sports mentality? How did that help you in building a company?
That's a good question. I like to think of it as a combination between the team and individual aspects, because so much of that sport in particular is it's like physical chess, right? You have to conserve your energy, you have to know what's going on, you have to be paying attention to what the other player is doing. And so much of it is understanding your limitations, understanding how far you can push yourself from both a mental and physical capacity. But from the team aspect, it's I going back to like little league days, I just kind of always ended up in leadership positions, and it was not really a comfortable spot for me to be in. I don't like the limelight. I don't like, being the one who's, rah rah and like getting everyone hyped up. Yet everyone was the one, everyone looked to me for the answers when we're down and out, when we need to get a win here. I was the one that they would turn to, and so whether or not it's something that like I've sought out, it's kind of always followed me wherever I've gone. So I try to take that mentality into the workplace as well, and it's served me well so far.
No, that's great. I actually grew up I'll be in the home of Little League Baseball tomorrow.
Oh yeah,
That's where I'm from. I'm from Williamsport. In fact, my
oh, cool.
father, Carl Stotts, who's the founder of Little League Baseball, he had worked with my dad in Boy Scouts. So
That's
that
super.
was interesting when they founded Little League Baseball. Uh, my dad was there actually. It was very
Super.
interesting. My dad was a little kid, but was there. Interesting scenario. It makes me feel warm too. I'm going to be there tomorrow actually. So I'll
Yeah,
be
yeah,
right by the stadium tomorrow.
that's
Uh,
awesome.
so, you go down through what are some of the key insights or pivotal moments you experienced during your journey with Genetica? Yeah, I know you've raised what 2.5 million or so, if I remember.
Mhm.
Um, and so, but what are some of the key insights or pivotal moments, and how do you go down through? And the dark times can be really dark sometimes, right? And the bright times can be really bright. But how do you stay even keel through all of them to keep the company moving forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Honestly, I meditate a lot. It's something that I've found to kind of help keep that even keel. But realistically, too, my banking background also helped me with that as well. The kind of sales training on that side of things. Never get too high, never get too low, and that I try to keep that with me, because it's you're absolutely right. It is there are high highs and there are low lows, and I like to think of it as like the fog of war almost, right? Like you've got all the information you possibly can around you, and always kind of gathering as much information as you can to make the best decisions. But there's only so far in advance that you can see, so much that you can predict. And so, um, it's making the best decisions that you can every single day, and try not to be too hard on yourself if the decision that you made a week ago, a month ago, a year ago comes back to rear its head, because you can only do so much with the information you have. And hopefully learning and benefiting from making those mistakes too, right? It's all about that kind of feedback loop. It's not just with product and getting the feedback, implementing it, and iterating. It's in operations as well. How do you learn the lessons from making a decision and implement that into the next time around and not make the same mistakes? I was talking to my business partner earlier, and we were just kind of like thinking back, and how do you, when times are that difficult and you're down and out, how do you not allow that kind of trauma almost to impact and make you more conservative with future decisions? It's really difficult to keep each
Something
moment.
that's a great point. I want to go, Ben. I'm a clinical
Yeah,
psychologist. I want to focus on that
yeah.
because I've been through that. When you're down, going down through it, here's the one thing, and I'll tell you what I've done in my journey, right?
Yeah,
So Scott McNeely, the founder of a company called Sun Microsystems. So I had lunch with him, and I remember he told me, always go to areas you fear the most, you're going to learn the most. As you get older, you're exactly right. It doesn't just happen as an entrepreneur. It happens as you get older. You start to narrow yourself because you're taking less and less risk, right? For all kinds of different
mhm,
reasons, but also makes you get older. And so one of the things that I learned is that always go out and seek those areas, always go out and find them. So for instance, a few years ago, I moved to Russia. I lived in Russia
oh
12
no
years
way.
in Moscow, and was one of the founders of the startup ecosystem over in Moscow. When we had a good relationship, I came back
Yeah,
2015. I was going back and forth a little bit, but we started one of the first accelerators in that region. So we had Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, even Germany. Some folks from the U.S. would actually come over. And what happened is I understood is that when you go to those areas that you fear the most, you learn the most. And the
mhm,
other thing, just like you said, having something to get your mind off it. I ride my bike 24 to 30, sometimes 50 miles a day. And I'm riding my
mhm,
bike and I use that to cleanse my brain. It's very important for all of you out there, right? To have something like that. The other thing that we talk about is like frontier medicine. I had 100 million stem cells put in my body, right? And mesenchymal stem cells, not in the US. I actually had the top guy in the world do it. And then what it does is you'd be surprised how your body changes and how you can take stress a whole lot more. Because when you were younger, you could take it a lot more. As you get older, your cells get old and they don't like stress. But if you have young cells in, it changes things. It's quite interesting. So you're absolutely right. And for all you out there, don't be afraid. In fact, one of the TED Talks I did is Unleashing Human Potential. You need to visualize. You need to go out there. It's kind of like going down and playing squash, right? If you give up before you play the game, you lose. If you
mhm.
even think about losing, you lose. You got to think about winning. It ain't about losing, it's about winning. And don't doubt yourself, believe in yourself. And if you do that, you win. Remember another thing to the startups 90% about building the unicorn is storytelling. It's not the product or service, it's a story. You are a venture capitalist. The people that captivated you, that enchanted you, are the people you wanted to invest in because you wanted to
Mhm.
hang around them.
That's why I'm here at Genetica. My co-founder, he's a phenomenal storyteller. I'm always the analytical, simplifier. He's the multiplier. He's a storyteller, and so it's kind of like a yin and yang in that sense. But he got me with that pitch, and I was like, I got to be a part of this. I got to be on this journey with him.
Well, and that's it. And convincing. I remember I was with. Well, I'll tell you offline because it's a powerful story for Silicon Valley. But I'll tell you after we're done with the show, we can spend a few minutes together
Yeah.
and talk. Okay, so given your extensive background in venture capital, what advice would you offer to startups seeking investment today, particularly in AI-driven markets? What should they be looking for? You've done it from both sides now. What's important? We said storytelling, right? But what else is important?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been noticing in this business cycle is that the traditional metrics that were used in the SaaS world are not necessarily as applicable in today's market. Churn rates are higher, and I forget the acronym, but it's almost like clients or users are more like tourists. They'll try something out for a few days, see how it works, and then move on to the next product. Um, so I think it's important to be able to, again, going back to the storytelling, finding the right metrics that validate the story that you're trying to tell, because some of the core standard KPIs may not be as applicable going forward in this kind of new, hyper growth market.
No, I agree. And it's gonna these tools give you superpowers, and when you use those superpowers wisely, you can do a lot of things.
Hmm.
Last year in August, my dog had stage 4 cancer, and I use a multi-agent large language model to get down through and at a molecular level to help me identify how to build a vaccine to be able to take care of my dog, to help my dog. And my dog went into complete remission of stage 4 cancer.
Wow.
So now, if I can do, I'm not a smart guy like you. I'm just a poor country boy. Grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania. But if a guy like me can do, I'm from Williamsport, the home of Little League Baseball, right? And if I can do, you can do anything. So, but the other thing is you got to go out and think outside of the box. And one of the things about meditation is nice because it gives you a chance to think about things and work through those issues like a dream.
Hmm.
And it's important because it keeps you balanced.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what is your approach to maintaining innovation and competitive advantage as your company grows?
Well, I think that kind of goes back to the AI stuff too. It's you got to stay on the bleeding edge for some of this AI stuff. That doesn't mean necessarily pushing all of, to production what's on the bleeding edge, but you know, our head of data science is right, up to date with everything that's going on. So much so that we started using some of the products out there that before they got really popular. We started using some of them and became design partners and things like that, because we were also using them in unconventional ways that made them look in closer and understand, like, oh wow, yeah, I understand how they're using this. That's not how it was intended, but like I understand why and how they're using it in this context. So it's important, like going back to the open mind, keeping an open mind about how some of these tools fit together, but always staying up to date on what's going on, because it's just moving at a pace that's so fast. If you take a month off, you're already behind and you're dead in the water.
A month
So
off, I don't even think you could take a couple of days off now. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's very interesting because in 2016, I was up in San Francisco talking about AI, and I was in front. I had like 300 articles written about it, and people said, "Oh, AI, it's not going to happen for 25 years." And and we raised $7 million in less than 3 months, and it was quite interesting. My partner David Yang is well known, so he was my CTO and co-founder, and he was a well-known investor, well-known venture builder. But we went down through and we said, "This is wrong. It's going to change everything. You don't understand. Generative AI pre-transformer model is going to change things, and generative AI post-transformer model is going to change everything." And if you don't buy into it, you're going to be so far behind, you're going to be an antique before you know it,
Mhm.
right?
Couldn't agree
Um,
more.
so let's go down through. We're coming up to the top of the show, and like I said, I'll come back after the show and we can talk for a few minutes. But where do you see the future of AI-driven solutions in retail and hospitality in the next 5 years? Where's it going to go?
Well, it's something that, I mean, we're trying to predict. I think that one of the things I'm confident of is that the legacy systems are not going to be implementing tools internally. And that's part of the advantage that we see and being able to work with groups that are kind of in the legacy tech space, is that there's going to be a generation of AI native point of sale systems and whatever else, right? We're already seeing that in the CRM category, ERP category. It's going to happen in the point of sale category next. And if they're not able to adopt AI tools to offer up to their clients, they're the next dinosaurs, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly. I was
so
going to say, you know what it is? Adopt or die.
yeah, exactly.
And here's another thing,
Yeah.
Ben, I did this article, and you'll appreciate this. It's called Infobesity is the number one killer.
Mhm.
And that the problem is that we have so much data around us, like we said, it's just killing us. And we need to make decisions. And whether it's in restaurant or hospitality, we need to know if somebody's, pilfering from us. We need to understand. You're right. It could be a discount. Maybe we had a bad chef and the chef was so bad we had to give people 50, 70 or gift certificates in order to get, for that night. And maybe it has nothing to do with pilferage. It has to do with the bad chef.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
I've
spot
been
on.
there, by the way, with one of those bad chefs a couple of times. And I'm sure it came out wrong because I wasn't the only one that was complaining.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
So, are there any exciting developments or new features in Genetica's platform and pipeline that you can share with the audience? So, one is in the platform, anything you can talk about. Another thing in terms of the pipeline, kind of new and exciting businesses you're going to focus on that could be interesting.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll talk about is agents, and I know agents are everywhere, but what's really exciting that we're doing is giving SMBs and SMEs the ability to create their own agents within their business, right? And so you don't have to be super technical to drag and drop and put things together to be able to understand how your business is operating or what reviews you're getting, or when that sentiment dips or is, you get a good review, whatever it is, right? And automate some of those workflows, like making those workflows super simple that non-technical people can do it, that mom and pops and small and medium-sized businesses are able to do it themselves. I think that's pretty game changing, because right now it's pretty much just either the folks who are willing to be on the bleeding edge, and the restaurant space for an SMB, that's pretty tough to do, or it's reserved for the enterprises, and very few are taking that opportunity today. But if you give them the approachable way to utilize those tools, then they can benefit from, just like those enterprises do.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, Winston Churchill said, give them the tools and we'll do the job, right? It's the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing. So, closing thoughts, and how do people get a hold of you, Ben?
Yeah, reach out, Ben at getgenetica.com. Feel free to reach out anytime, or on LinkedIn. Would love to connect. My general ethos is I love to hear from people. I love to meet new people. So feel free to drop me a line.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, Ben, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And thanks to all of you for joining one more time. GSD presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech. My name is Gary Fowler, and I'm your host. This is Top Global Startups. And Ben, thanks for joining us today, and have an amazing weekend. I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
as well.